Hey, what's up everybody? This is Scott here at Little Pink House of America. Excited to share with you a lot of things, certainly what we're doing on a weekly basis, who we're working with, the trainings that we're putting together. And today, I'm really excited to share with you this amazing $94,000 profit, which is actually more than $94,000, but a deal that one of our affiliates just closed. This good-looking couple right here just last week closed it, walked with $94,000. That was the icing on the cake. The deal was awesome. They were excited about it, and I'm really excited to share the breakdown of that deal with you. So thanks for joining me here, and got a lot of things I want to cover in this short little Facebook Live, and I'm going to kind of start with kind of the merits of what I'm going to talk about today. So this is Will and LaShonda Clark. They live right outside of St. Louis, Missouri. I think it's Branson, Missouri. And you guys watching this probably maybe subconsciously are thinking, you know, you are in real estate, you train real estate, generating a $94,000 check, even though that might be impressive. I've seen all those flashy checks before. It should be easy for you. It's what you do. Want you to know these folks here are exactly like some of you watching today. When they came into my world, they had zero real estate experience, and I mean zero. Will is a linesman. He does well for himself, makes a good living. LaShonda is actually a dog groomer, so they made a good living together, but they wanted more. They entered our world to learn real estate and ultimately to make big profits like they did here in this deal. And I will tell you something that is somewhat, not so much off of the record, but maybe not part of the training. When Will had closed the deal, and the dust had settled, and you can see, can they see this check? They probably can't see. You guys see this? You think I'm lying? $94,000. They probably can't read that, can they? We got the settlement statement here too for you that are skeptical watching this, but when I talked to Will after the fact, I said, we talked about the reality of how many people in their life and how often in their life get to put a check for $94,000 in their bank account. And the reality is not many. Most people get paychecks, they save, but they don't get big chunks like that. And Will and I had a special moment, and he shared with me kind of what it meant to their family, some of their plans for that money. I couldn't be happy for him. He's a great guy, she's a great lady, and they deserve big profits like that. Hopefully you will learn to do the same. So, all right, let me go ahead and break this deal down. So first of all, the deal is what we call a subject to. So the strategy of the deal is a subject to. And let me go ahead and define what subject to is. I'm going to tell you where we found the lead and exactly what we said, how we did it, the contract we used, and ultimately the math and the profit, which is very good looking at the very end of the day here when I show you the total number that they generated. So let me start with what a subject to is. Anybody that's in real estate investing has probably heard of subject to, but most people don't know what that is. So if you're buying a house subject to, you're buying the home, you're taking legal title to it, but you are leaving the underlying mortgage that is in the seller's name on the property. By the way, that's also the collateral for the bank. The property is the collateral for the bank. The seller is the borrower to the bank. The seller's mortgage remains on the property. So the phrase subject to means you're buying the home subject to the underlying mortgage remaining in place. In a traditional deal, or what's called an arm's length transaction, when you have a willing seller, willing buyer, there's no distressed situation there. It's a normal arm's length transaction. You have a traditional sale, legal title to the property transfers. You'll get title insurance on the property. The title company will make sure there are no liens and encumbrances on the property, and they'll guarantee you clear title. In this case, you are buying the home. You can get title insurance with what's called an exception or an exclusion regarding the first mortgage. So the title company can say, look, the house is free of any liens or encumbrances or defects on the title, and we're willing to insure it, all the way back to the beginning of the house, and but we will insure over the top of the mortgage. So we can't obviously insure when there's a mortgage in place. You should have no issues getting title insurance with an exclusion or an exception for the existing mortgage, and it should be probably an investor-friendly title company that you go to so they understand the nature of this transaction. But I've always gotten title insurance with the exception of the mortgage whenever I've done these types of deals. So you are taking legal title, leaving the mortgage in place. So simply put, that's what it is. Now, number one, why would a seller do it? That's always the big question. And of course, it boils down to really one word, and that is motivation. A seller that is going to sell the home subject to is in a situation where they are either financially or physically distressed or both. and therefore they have a motivation that they want to move away from this property. What was once an asset has now become a liability in most cases. One of the best targets, which we're going to talk about in these modules, are pre-foreclosures. So sellers who are behind a few payments and are standing to lose the property and going to a full-blown foreclosure, that has always been my favorite and really the preeminent target for subject to sellers. So a seller who, whether they have equity or not, they've realized now I'm losing the property. I'm going to have a foreclosure on my credit, full-blown foreclosure. I'm not going to be able to buy a house for 3 years. And any other purchase that I make as a seller who lost their home to foreclosure, whether it's a car or a credit card or a TV, your credit is going to be adversely affected to the point where it's going to affect every purchase in your life. Everything that revolves around credit when you have a full-blown foreclosure is going to be adversely affected. So there's a motivation that a seller can get when they are behind in payments getting ready to lose the property, where you can actually save them from a full-blown foreclosure and all of the negatives that go along with that on their credit going forward. And it's really an exchange, and that's a word that I'm going to use through these modules, is that you're exchanging, you're agreeing with the seller to catch up their payments, to continue to make their payments, to transfer the utilities over immediately, to be responsible for taxes and insurance. Even if they're in the payment escrowed, you're still responsible for them as part of the owner of the property. You'll agree to mow the grass or shovel the snow or spray for bugs, or if there are issues with the home, they become fully yours. So when you own a home or you own an investment property, there are things that you are responsible for when you are taking over somebody's loan subject to, when you're buying the house subject to taking over the loan. One of the things that you'll say to them in the scope of your presentation to the seller or your script to the seller are all of the things that you'll be doing when it comes to maintaining and taking care of the property. So I always like to probably flower that up just a little bit to make it look like there's a lot of things that you're going to be doing, because there are, but the essence of that conversation with the seller is that you are going to take all of the burden from this property off of their shoulders and put it on yours. And in exchange for that, in exchange for you coming out of pocket with payments and closing costs and mowing the grass and maintaining the yard and upkeeping the property, you require the title. Your training a long time ago says you don't ever put money into a property until you've actually taken legal title to it, and that's what you will ultimately say to the seller. Training a long time ago taught me that. It's a rule that I've always abided by. So, all right, so I told you about Will and LaShonda. I told you there are affiliates in Branson, Missouri. I told you the type of deal this was a subject to, and I've defined that a few times. I told you that we used a purchase and sale agreement. The seller was $10,000 behind in payments. The minute we put it under contract, we took it out to market to our buyers. I told you the types of buyers that we like to sell to, those that can afford a mortgage and a down payment. Let me be really clear, we don't sell any properties without a down payment. That's always It's critical. It's not even a question. You got to have skin in the game. The buyer has to have something to lose, and that's how we sell most of our properties. We don't want the buyer to lose. We want them to go get a mortgage, so they put money down, skin in the game, that really binds them to the deal. So in this case, we found a buyer that put $25,000 down, which was about 10%, maybe just a little shy of what the value was at that time. This was early 2020. Buyer shows up, put $25,000 down. Here's what we did. We took $10,000 of that and we caught up the mortgage. We then put the other 15 in what we fondly refer to as the hip national bank, or in our pocket, right? So right up front, when we bought the property, we literally bought it and then sold it on a lease with an option to buy, and we put $15,000 in our pocket that day. Well, really, Will and LaShonda did. So happy for them. So right up front, it's important that we get paid all along the way. And so in a deal like this, there really were 3 paydays. And in some of our deals, we have as many as 5 paydays. This one here, they made 3 big paydays. So right when they sold the property, so they bought it and sold it at the same time, but they didn't really sell it by transferring the legal title. They sold it on a lease with an option to buy. So they bought it, they took title, they left the seller's mortgage in place, agreed to make payments on that mortgage and ultimately pay it off at some point down the road. They then turn around and they sold it on a lease with an option to buy. Now, when you sell on a lease with an option, you're not transferring the title. So you still remain in title. You're selling it on what we call terms, or what's referred to as terms. A lease with an option to buy means the buyer puts money down for the purchase of the option. In our world, it's 5 to 10% as a minimum. They then agree to lease the property, make payments fully responsible for any sort of upkeep, maintenance, or repairs of the property. Every property needs upkeep. When you buy on a lease option in our world, you're responsible for those things. We also don't give any credit for the monthly payments. So in the case here, every time a payment was made to the bank, we owed less because the mortgage was getting paid down. But when our lease option buyer makes payments to us, they don't get any credit for those payments. It's like a lease payment, and that's really an incentive that we use for our buyers to go get a loan at some point. But it's important to know that when a buyer makes a payment, it's pretty much cash flow to us. They're not getting any credit. So we sell on a lease with an option to buy. We give them a period of time. By the way, the money that they put down, the buyer, we give them credit for that. So we not only give them credit toward their down payment, we give them credit off of the price. So we want to have a win-win scenario. It's important. That's how we do business. It's really the core of our values here. You can't really see behind me, but we want to always set up the people we work with for win-win situations. So the buyer that put $25,000 down, they owed $25,000 less when they went to closing, and ultimately they got full credit for that. So, all right, so Will and LaShonda made $15,000 up front. The beauty of the subject to the second payday is the payment that we make is only covering the seller's mortgage. So one of the questions we will ask a seller is, what is your monthly mortgage payment? Does that include taxes and insurance? Are there any HOAs or other monthly fees down in Florida where we live? There are HOAs in every corner, so there's always a couple $100 extra on top of your payment. Is there a PMI or more private mortgage insurance that is going to add to your monthly payment? What is the monthly payment all in? That's typically what we will agree to cover. And in most cases, the mortgage payment is going to be less than you can lease or rent the house out for. So the hope is that you have a positive cash flow. In this case, the payment was about $1,500. We sold it with a payment around $1,900. We netted about, or Will and LaShawn netted about $300 a month positive cash flow. Pretty cool stuff. By the way, what is passive income? Passive income, the definition is basically generating money for not doing anything. When you create a cash flow spread in real estate, you're collecting $1,800 and paying $1,500. You're not working for that money. That's residual or passive income, or residual and passive income, making $300 per month. So the term of the deal was 24 months, and it just cashed out last week. So Will and LaShonda made a total of $7,200 in cash flow over a 2-year term. $300 buys a couple of nice dinners. It can buy some clothes. It can buy some groceries. $300 a month and just extra spending money is great. If you had 5 of these or 10 of these, you can do the math. Now you got $3,000 a month coming in residual. So these types of deals and deals similar in our world, what we call terms deals, we use a lot of no cash, no credit strategies to invest in real estate, which means you don't have to have any money in the deal and you can generate positive cash flow. I don't know how many different industries out there get you paydays like this. And by the way, Andrew, I need to ask Andrew a question behind the camera here. How much money did Will and LaShonda have in the deal? Andrew, how about the goose egg, right? That's the beautiful part. I'm kind of skipping ahead to the best part here, but these guys had no money of their own in this deal. Even the money that was required to catch up the mortgage came from the buyer. No money of their own deal. They didn't have to sign personally. They didn't have to have their credit pulled. They didn't have to have personal liability. They made, get this, drum roll please. Brrr. Thank you for the background noise. Boom, $116,328. Let me say that one more time. $116,328. They made $15 up front. They made $300 a month for 2 years, which is about $7,200. And I've got the settlement statement right here for those that don't believe. $116,328 because their payday last week was $94,000. If that's not a smile of a guy that's put $94,000 in his bank, I don't know what is, right? So at the end of the day, again, couldn't be happier for these guys. Those that are watching that have no experience, that think maybe this is not achievable for you or a pipe dream or it's not real, I'm telling you, it's real. These guys had no experience whatsoever. I'm very proud of the team that I've had a chance to assemble. We've got great people with great hearts here. They want to see people change their lives through financial freedom, through achieving that through real estate. And so as Will and I talked, I said, look, Will, I don't know if I would call this generational money. I'm smiling because it's not, but putting a check for $94,000 into your bank, that's enough to have an impact on your life. pay off credit cards, save, go on vacation. I can tell you they had a heck of a nice steak dinner that Friday night. So, in fact, I can almost guarantee you Will had a better Friday than anybody watching this when he put that check in his bank account. I almost guarantee you that. So, but at the end of the day, kidding aside, this is something that we teach and train. It's one of our favorite strategies. In fact, I've got a full course on it, the Subject to course. You can look on our website. I'm sure there's some information here. PinkAffiliates.com is where you can find us. If you have questions for me, I do check these. It's Scott@PinkAffiliates.com. Send them my way. We love the interaction and certainly are glad to answer any questions that you have on this deal or others. And so I do want to give a big shout out to the Clarks. Kudos to them. Good people, well deserved. They executed the strategy. So one of the things I can tell you about them is they took action. And that can be cliche sometimes. People talk about take action and all this stuff. But when you're given really good stuff, what are you going to do with it when you take action and you have the right guidance, i.e. look at this pink wall behind me. We're the Little Pink House of America. We've got training that we really take our people under our wings and guide them so they can have paydays like this. It's well deserved because they've taken action. So that was the deal. I'm excited. I like to be excited, especially when I see paydays like this and knowing what that does for somebody like the Clarks. If this is something that is of interest to you, let us know. More than anything, we want to come out, give you some good value. Hopefully you have some good takeaways. Hopefully you can have some good nuggets from this little live training here and really more of a recap of how we broke this deal down. It takes know-how, but these deals are out there in every market in the country. I will say, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, as we are doing this live, we're really in the thralls of inflation, maybe, interest rates just going crazy. The Fed, hey, what you're doing looks like it's working. It's slowing things down, and we're seeing those results. But what does that mean? What does that chaos or just the changes in the economy and the interest rates with buyers now being priced out of properties that they could have afforded a year ago because the payment was lower? What it means is there's going to be more opportunities. I've heard many things. I'm a student of business. I'm a student of real estate. I read, study almost 7 days a week on what we do here. A lot of chatter about what's forthcoming. And you get it all over the gamut, right? People that back in 2008 predicted the crisis, said it's going to be the same thing, or maybe not as bad, maybe it's worse. Who knows? I don't think that's going to be the case, for the record. I think there's enough checks and balances. I think there's a limited supply. I think the banks and the mortgages that are out there currently are much more vetted than they were pre-2008. So I don't think we're going to have another episode as bad as that. What I can tell you with certitude and almost absolute certainty is that there are going to be amazing opportunities the next 12 to 24 months that have the potential to change lives. If you can take advantage of this massive transfer of wealth, this massive opportunity that's forthcoming, market is shifting, sellers are going to be falling behind on payments. 10 months ago, January 1, the moratorium that was placed through COVID formally lifted everywhere. The courts now have foreclosures, there's people delinquent, all of the forbearances that were made in good faith that really set a lot of people up for failure are now rearing their heads. We're seeing the activity, we're seeing the deals. I can tell you something else. In fact, we are looking at deals now. If there's not a $100,000 spread in them, it's not that we're scoffing at them, but it's like almost not good enough. I've never in my 26 years had deals that I looked at consistently where we're looking at $100,000 margins consistently. Those opportunities are in your backyard too. I can promise and guarantee you that. You have to know where to look, where to get started. So anyway.